Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Daily Debate. My name is Ahmed Nader, and tonight we'll be focusing on the COP27, the United Nations Climate Change Conference that will be taking place in Egypt for the first time, in the Middle East and the Arab world as well for the first time, representing Africa as for the Egyptians as well, as we will be focusing on the eco-friendly projects that were implemented and will be undertaken by the Egyptian government following directives made by His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi in the past few months and in the past 8 years in general, to be taking good preservation of the environment. We will be shedding more light on this important topic, the COP27 that will be taking place in Sharm el-Sheikh, the resort of Sharm el-Sheikh, in the month of November, following the top stories for today. We will be starting straight away from His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, who held a phone call with Pope Tawadros II to offer his condolences over the victims of Abu Sifein Church fire in Giza on Sunday. During the telephone conversation, President al-Sisi said that the state institutions are providing all the needed support to contain the repercussions of the painful accident. On his social media account, as we can see, the head of state said he is closely following up on the developments over the painful accident. He directed the concerned state institutions to take all the necessary measures to swiftly deal with the accident and its repercussions and provide health care to the injured. Meanwhile, President al-Sisi gave his instructions to the Armed Forces Engineering Authority to restore the church after the fire, which resulted in the death of 41 people and the injury of 14 others. Of course, sending our condolences to the families of the deceased and the injured. And still in the same context, the Armed Forces General Command extended the condolences for the victims of the Giza church fire on Sunday and offered its deep condolences for the families of the victims and all the Egyptian Copts, and wished a speedy recovery for the injured. First Lady Mrs. Intisar al-Sisi also offered her deep condolences to the families of the victims of the Giza church fire. The First Lady wished a speedy recovery for the injured. On another front, the head of the National Media Authority, Hussein Zain, offered the condolences to Pope Tawadros II, the families of the victims and all the Copts over the death of 41 people in the fire that erupted in Abu Sifein Church in western Munira Imbebe on Sunday. In a statement, Zain confirmed his stand beside the nation's partners to face this painful accident that hurt all the citizens in the society. He wished a speedy recovery for the injured. And Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli said that £100,000 will be paid to the families of the dead and £20,000 to the injured in the church fire. The Prime Minister expressed the government's condolences over the incident. Earlier, Madbouli inspected the site of the fire, during which he said he was following up closely on the efforts by the state institutions in relation to the incident and instructed to offer full health care to the injured upon directives of President al-Sisi. And the Interior Ministry issued a statement on Sunday over the Abu Sifein Church fire, saying the security services were informed that the fire inside the church in the western Munira area in Imbebe, Giza, at around 9 a.m. According to the statement, civil protection forces were immediately sent to the scene. The fire was put off and the dead and the injured were transferred to the hospitals. The statement said that the forensic authority determined that the fire broke out because of an electrical fault in the air conditioner on the church's second floor, which houses the lecture halls. Meanwhile, the state prosecutor inspected the site of the accident and opened an investigation over the fire in the church. And turning to another front, as we did witness a cabinet reshuffle that took place yesterday, the swearing-in ceremony was held today, and the Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi witnessed the swearing-in of Egypt's 13 new ministers in the cabinet of Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli. The president urged the new ministers to show impartiality, objectivity and dedication, consolidate the principle of the efficiency, and to make the utmost effort as a consistent management approach to advance the nation's interest in the first place. The president stressed to the ministers the importance of the regular communications with the citizens to provide them with the best services within the field of each ministry. He also called for spreading and deepening the public awareness of the international, regional and the domestic challenges facing the state, as well as the efforts, achievements and the current developments taking place within the framework of the comprehensive development witnessed by Egypt across the governorates. Sisi urged the ministers to accurately understand the tools and the capacities of the ministries and the related institutions and authorities, as a statement said. The president affirmed the importance of managing these tools and capacities well to maximize the outcomes and develop the work mechanisms to ensure the maximum possible benefits and returns. We will be heading to the main topic of the daily debate for tonight. As I said in the beginning, the COP27, which will be held here in Egypt for the first time. The Voice of Africa. Egypt will be the voice of Africa for this important summit, discussing and having dialogues regarding the future of climate change and the impacts, the negative impacts more specifically of climate change, which will be affecting both Egypt and Africa as well as the world. We'll be having more information about those important events that will be taking place in November in Sharm el-Sheikh in the upcoming report.
Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has directed the government to reinforce the national plan to boost renewable energy and maximize its value. This plan aims to diversify energy resources required for the development process, including green hydrogen. Moreover, President al-Sisi urged the addition of green hydrogen to the integrated energy system in partnership with the private sector and major global enterprise in this field, while working on the localization of manufacturing electronics equipment. This will help Egypt to keep up with the global development concerning climate change and the transition to green energy. The president discussed these plans in a meeting earlier last week with Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli, Minister of Electricity Mohammed Sheker, Minister of Petroleum Tariq al-Mullah. During the meeting, the latest updates on the new and renewable electricity generated from wind and solar energies were showcased in collaboration with the private sector and foreign partners under Egypt's sustainable energy strategy. It is worth noting that the strategy targets bringing renewable energy production to 42% of the country's electricity mix by 2035.
Welcome back. You're still watching the Daily Debate, and I'm honored to be having with me in the studio for tonight to be discussing the COP27 and the major implications of having such an international summit taking place here in Egypt, and more specifically in Sharm el-Sheikh in the month of November. Is Dr. Salah, the Sustainable Development Expert and the Associate Professor at the British University in Egypt. Thank you very much for being with us tonight.
Hi Ahmed, the honor is mine.
Thank you very much once again. First of all, the importance of having such a global summit that will be bringing leaders from all over the world, from all over the West, the European countries and Africa at the same time, to be discussing the future of climate change and the major implications, whether positively or negatively, of the climate change. How do you see this event taking place in Egypt?
It's an anchor point. You know, before all COPs were taking place in developed countries, but
Yes.
This is the first COP that takes place in a developing country. And this allows us to highlight some issues, some challenges that we are currently facing.
Yes.
Not only speaking on behalf of Egypt, but on behalf of all developing countries. To pinpoint all the challenges related to climate change and exchange of knowledge in terms of how we can prepare for the climate change. Preparedness is a key point, and we need to stress this. Preparedness also is actually context oriented. So when we look at the vulnerability of our countries, we'll find that we are at very high risk and very vulnerable areas to
Yes.
global climate change.
To be choosing Egypt as the host of the COP27, what does it say, as you mentioned, the preparedness to be hosting such a summit and the efforts of Egypt in this field in the past years to be preserving the environment and fighting the negative implications of the climate change?
Egypt has always taken a strategic role regionally and globally as well. So this actually gives some of its highlighting its role in this regard, and it also puts a lot of responsibility here, because all the eyes of the world are going to be directed towards us and to
Yes.
trace our effort in this regard. We are talking about how we are facing climate change. So our agenda has to be clear and transparent to whole the world, and it has to speak by itself, and not only in terms of developing countries, but also for whole the world. So this is a challenge because it's taking place in a developing country, so of course we're going to highlight many issues related to us, but again it's a global problem. So we have to make a balance between developed and developing countries, and to highlight the challenges faced by both of them, which may be similar in some cases and different in another.
Mm-hmm. You've mentioned that this will be showing the world how Egypt is dealing with climate change.
Definitely.
In your opinion, in the past years, how did Egypt face the negative repercussions of climate change effectively?
There are several escalating problems related to climate change, and it has different impacts, not only in terms of environment, but also an economy and society. So if we trace the national efforts in this regard, we have to trace it on three different lines and three different perspectives: the environmental plans, the national economic plans, and also what's related to community and society. Tackling the problem of climate change is actually a very difficult problem that requires an integrated effort, not only from the government, but also from the people and from governmental and non-governmental organizations.
Mm-hmm.
So this integration is going to somehow put us on the beginning of the road. It's a very long road, and we have to take serious action starting from a couple of years ago.
Yes.
We have started national strategic plans, and I can see that the awareness is actually rising, and we have on stage every day we witness several initiatives in this regard. So this is a very, very promising step.
It is a very long road, as you said. Where are we on this road? Where can we be seeing the benefits? When can we be seeing the benefits of the efforts that we have made in the past 3 to 5 years?
The problem, Ahmed, is actually we are, or the consequences of climate change is actually unpredictable till now. So we can't really have plans or accurate scenarios in this regard. But what we know is that we have to take serious actions, and we have to have tight plans for decarbonizing our economy. And I have seen this very, very significant through the past few years. But again, we have to continue our path and to put more effort in this regard.
You said that there are similarities and differences between the developing world and the developed world, and more specifically the West versus Africa and the Middle East. What are the similarities of the negative impacts of climate change that will be hitting both worlds, both parts of the world, and what are the similarities and the differences between both parts?
To answer your question, we have to look at the portfolio of each country in terms of its energy resources, how much has it managed to diversify its resources and secure its natural resources, and so on. And this varies from one country to another. It depends on the amount of natural resources and how it managed to benefit it for the past years. So, for instance, China and US have been actually racing towards power.
Yes.
And this race is actually taking new forms. Before, it was more energy exploitation put in the industry to reach higher economic benefit. But lately we have seen that no, they have more awareness in this regard, and they are taking serious actions because they are the two main developed countries responsible for the climate change problem. So we have seen them now racing for more clean energy sources, exploiting more renewables, and so. This change is actually telling us that no matter how developed a country may reach, it is at risk, at great risk from climate change, and we are all going to suffer the consequences.
On the other hand, you mentioned awareness, but you were speaking about the political leaderships, for example, of the US and China, that they need to be taking steps towards preserving the environment and fighting the negative implications of the climate change. On the other hand, here in Egypt, we're trying to be raising the awareness of the citizens through the initiative like Go Green, for example. How do you see the importance of having such an initiative at this specific time before the November summit of the COP27 here in Egypt, and the possible benefits of having a Go Green initiative in the country?
Actually, the responsibility to take action against climate change lies on everyone, because we're all taking part of it somehow, directly or indirectly. Our different and modern lifestyles, use of automobile cars, the waste we produce, all these actually contribute to global climate change and have an adverse impact on the environment. So it's actually like it's a connected circles. We have to act on them equally and balanced. So on a strategic level, we have the national global plans to integrate the environmental perspective on different levels, and also we have on the local level local plans and programs, and so, and also on the scale of individuals. Raising awareness is such an important thing, because no matter what action the government is going to take place, if the person, the citizen himself won't feel responsible and won't take action, it won't echo.
Do you see the response from the people, a change in the mindset, a change in the lifestyles, as you mentioned?
It is changing, it is taking place. Yes, it is different now, but again, more effort is needed, because, you know, we are racing, so something like this, and the global change is like escalating much more in magnitude than our efforts are. So this is how we have to take serious action every day, because each minute counts.
So why do you think the normal citizens all over the world, and more specifically in Egypt, they don't feel the threat yet of climate change?
No, they feel the change, but maybe not exactly the threat. They feel that the climate is changing, the extreme weather conditions, and so, but maybe its relation to climate change and how much natural resources is not really that much linked to them. And maybe this is why you are taking part, of course, as a media to
Yes.
raise this awareness. And nothing comes overnight. We just have to put a plan and stick to it, and hopefully we'll witness some fruitful results.
Of course, in the past years, we've had national sustainable development plans for the country for the upcoming 10, 20, and maybe 50 years for Egypt. Where does it lie, the importance of having the initiative of Go Green, to be protecting the environment, to be facing the negative impacts of climate change, with the sustainable development plan that we already have?
When we think of the environment, and we think of it globally, and we always have to adopt a long-term perspective. So we are not taking plans that are actually going to have an impact just in a few years, but we have to have a plan and a prediction scenarios on the long term. So Go Green is actually going to be fruitful, I believe. After some while, we're going to witness its impact and its results. But as I mentioned, that all of these are a positive step on the way, and we have to stick to it, and we have to raise more and more awareness and more integration with all sectors of the community to take part in these initiatives. And actually, every time I go on social media or something, I find more invitations to take part in official or non-official initiatives to preserve the environment or to raise awareness in this regard. So this is a very positive step on the way.
So does this mean that the citizens themselves are advocating for the negative impacts of climate change, to be fighting it, to be preserving the environment, in your opinion?
Yes, I see that more people are actually taking the responsibility, each in his place. So for instance, I find these invitations from academics, from scientists, from also from people working in the industry, and I find also some very interesting initiatives to integrate both or raise collaboration between industry and academia in this regard. Because so many key issues are actually missing in terms of the technical aspects related to renewables and clean energy production, green hydrogen, and so that can be actually answered through this integration. And of course, we have the win-win situation, because it's going to benefit both scientists and also the stakeholders.
We are reaching a very important step of having a green city. For example, Sharm el-Sheikh, it received about $7 million to be transformed into a green city. What is the meaning of a green city, and what are the steps that are needed to be implemented to be reaching the level of a green city?
When we talk about this scale, it's actually more than a building. It's actually more than the scale of just programs or plans. So we have to think integrally of, first of all, the infrastructure for this city, because it acts like a backbone. Every day we witness advancement in modern technology, and to raise the efficiency of renewables, to raise the efficiency of, to reduce our energy consumption, to reduce emissions. All these technical aspects require some kind of infrastructure. You can't really you can have such an infrastructure in an existing city, but it is challenging because you already have the asset there. But it is promising to have it in a new city development. This is the future. So it's the potential to set this backbone, and then you can have your plans and set like parts of a puzzle that actually completes and have a green city, a full picture of a green city. Buildings, services, roads, all these have to be part of a smart and a green city.
One of the steps that will be taken in Sharm el-Sheikh before the COP27 is to be having a proper waste management procedures in Sharm el-Sheikh. Do you think that it would be successfully implemented in the city and propagated to bigger cities and the capital, for example, Cairo, Alexandria, in the future, the new administrative capital? Because, of course, as the people grow in number, we would be needing more procedures of that.
Definitely, construction waste management, it has many potentials here because we have the recycling market is very well prepared for this. But maybe the only thing lacking, from my opinion, is how to reduce the waste. Once we reduce the amount of waste, it will be channeled efficiently for recycling and so on. I see it a great potential of construction waste management also in terms of finding opportunities on a building level, and also like an exchange and developing a market for recycling and reusing on a scale of building elements and building materials. So this is very interesting actually. So you see, more green jobs in this regard are going to flourish.
Yes, the green city of Sharm el-Sheikh in the future will be a destination for tourists as well, environmentally touristic destination for the people coming from all over the world. Do you think that this is a new type of tourism to be attracting people from all over the world?
Definitely, but we have to promote for it in this regard. So maybe if we adopted something like an agenda for marketing for the city, from this perspective, it's going to be very fruitful in the future. And in order to do this, of course, we have the market or the media campaign, and also we have to work on some kind of promoting more events for scientists, exchange of knowledge through conferences, webinars, events, in order to have the name echoing worldwide.
On the other hand, all of this needs training for the citizens who are living there, who are living in Egypt in general, and for the civil servants who will be implementing those procedures in order to be turning Sharm el-Sheikh and hopefully in the future other cities into a green city. What sort of training do you think would be implemented, not just for the civil servants, but for the citizens as well, to be protecting the environment and protecting what would be done there?
To have some examples like a pilot project is going to be very useful in this. But in this regard, we're not talking about a pilot project, but we're going to talk about a pilot city. So Sharm el-Sheikh and also the new capital and similar examples are going to stand up and maybe teach us some lessons in this regard. Training is going to be efficient in terms of actual hands-on the project. Training regarding green and sustainable issues and on one hand, and also smart sustainability on the other hand, can actually tackle different perspectives. So we have the training in the building sector, we have also services, we have and also of course the market, and having more opportunities for green investments. All these actually can raise some kind of awareness and create new opportunities in this field.
One of the steps that the government has decided to do in order to be having a green city in Sharm el-Sheikh, in order to be preserving the environment, is to be planting about 10,000 acres of mangroves along the coastline of the Red Sea in general, not just for Sharm el-Sheikh. How do you see this step? And it could be propagated in different governorates, not just for the Red Sea. How do you see the importance of having it, first of all, for the Red Sea governorates?
Mangroves is a type of planting that it's very well known as a nature-based solution to combat climate change, because it have very useful properties for decarbonizing the environment. And when we talk about a developing country with limited economic resources, we have to look at nature-based solutions which are more efficient. So actually we take lessons, and also this may be one of the training campaigns that you have just mentioned in terms of vegetation, planting, forestry, because as I mentioned, this may be a very, very good start for a developing country to combat climate change.
Do you think that on the personal level, in terms of the citizens themselves, they could be having personal initiatives to be having, for example, renewable energy lighting their houses all day and all night long? Do you think that this could be done within Egypt nowadays, or it would be too expensive without the help of the government?
Well, I have seen initiatives that are actually very, very good and very useful, especially in places which are off grids. So yes, renewables, of course, when we talk about their benefit, we have to be very careful that till now they are useful or beneficial in terms of the economies of scale, but they are expensive if they are applied by an all. But actually there are different types or some types of renewable energy that you may have as an owner, and it's actually going to be useful on the long term, because as I mentioned, renewables, when we think about renewables, you have to provide a capital cost, and in advance you have to pay more for installing the technique, and then you are going to have your a long-term benefit. Mm-hmm. So these studies are already justified and they are there, but maybe more awareness to the people, to the citizens about this is going to promote more renewables, and we are going to witness them in the market.
Do we have ideas from other developed parts of the globe that some citizens, they had an idea, they had an initiative to be protecting the environment in a certain way, having a certain project that could be done here in Egypt and in Africa in general?
Recycling. Of course, this is the easiest thing, and actually many flourishing markets have actually been
So it could be done
based
on the personal level?
Yes. It could start as a small unit and then it can expand later. So you find the citizen, for instance, having this recycling initiative on a scale of 10 blocks and then 100 blocks and then more and more. And it's actually very beneficial and economically, as I mentioned. So this can be one of the steps. And also, you know, there are some initiatives, for example, roof planting, and others for working on developing new sustainable materials in the market. So because, you know, the building sector is actually has a huge impact in terms of global climate change. So we have also these learned lessons, and the market is actually taking place also based on individual initiatives.
Yes, Dr. Wala, we will be turning to the other report of the daily debate for tonight, which comes from the directives of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to be planting 100 million trees across Egypt in the upcoming period. We'll be having more details about this important decision in the upcoming report.
Egypt has launched a campaign of planting 100 million trees nationwide. The 100 million trees campaign comes under the auspices of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi as part of Egypt's efforts towards combating climate change. Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli said that the initiative begins with extensive planting on both sides of highways, and as the government aims to increase the green areas in urban cities. 9,900 sites with a total area of 6,600 acres have been pinpointed nationwide to be suitable for tree forests or gardens. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Environment said that the ministry will plant 1 million trees annually through a number of programs, including the presidential initiative Decent Life. The minister continued saying that more than tree planting programs would be carried out in schools, universities, institutes, neighborhoods, local units, youth centers, and others.
Welcome back. You're still watching the Daily Debate, and I'm honored to be having with me in the studio Dr. Salah, the Sustainable Development Expert and the Associate Professor at the British University in Egypt. As we did see in the past report, the directives of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to be planting 100 million trees along the highways of Egypt. How do you see the importance environmentally for the country?
100 trees now are actually, it's like building an asset for a greenway. You know, this term is very well known in urban design and development, greenway. It intends at raising the air quality of cities, and as we have just, or as you know, that they are planting on the highway, which are very known to have the poorest quality of air as a result of combustion of vehicles. So it's like having a source of pollution and acting on this source in order not to expand more pollution from this. So this is a smart way of handling problem at the source. In terms of course, of the irrigation and the challenges that we are going to have, because planting requires a lot of irrigation. On the other hand, so of course we have to have parallelly a smart system for irrigation that depends on grey water. Both of them should have an integral perspective to have this project, and also to act as a seed for many coming projects in this regard. We start on the highways, but also this can be an individual initiative that can be adopted by citizens themselves, raising more awareness to the benefits of this. And of course, when we say the type of planting, which trees are we going to plant, how are they suitable for the context, for the climate that we have, in order to have a successful project, how much water they require, and of course all other associated aspects. But yes, they are a very important step for to combat the climate change, and of course to mitigate the problem that cities face in terms of poor air quality.
How do you see the role of the Ministry of Environment in the past couple of years, and more specifically gearing up to the COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh?
There are more initiatives and more active role witnessed through the past few years by all these projects that aim at more raising more environmental concern, and not only looking at Egypt in isolation, but having an exchange rule and the exchange of knowledge with other developing countries on one hand, and with developed countries to have some kind of learned lessons from, because they have taken further steps on the way. So it's very, very good to see this exchange. We are actually having a strategic position to benefit from both developed and developing countries.
On the other hand, we did see the importance of the green hydrogen, because we had, as Egyptian companies, they had a lot of cooperations with international bodies to be producing the green energy for the benefit of the energy sector in Egypt, and to be exporting it as well to the outer world. What is green hydrogen in the first place, and is the importance of it for the energy sector?
Hydrogen is one of the most promising energy sources, and it's not only about its ability to act as a source of power, but also for storing energy. Because if you remember a couple of meetings before, we were discussing renewables, and I mentioned that the problem with renewable energy is that it costs a lot to store this energy. So hydrogen actually presents a solution in this regard. In terms of answering what is green hydrogen in specific, it's very interesting to know that scientists actually differentiate between the type of how we generate hydrogen. Hydrogen is an abundant element, but it's not actually, we can't find it by itself standalone in the environment. It has to be combined with something. So for instance, you have the water, you have the molecules of hydrogen and oxygen. And in order to split them, to have pure hydrogen alone, it requires energy. So what about the type or the source of energy? If it is derived from coal, it's called brown hydrogen. It is derived from natural gas or fossil fuels. It's called gray, and both brown and gray actually cause an adverse impact on the environment. This is why they are gray and brown.
Colors.
Yes, and we have an interesting term called a blue hydrogen. Blue hydrogen is actually associated with using fossil fuels, but with less impact because they involve another mechanism for carbon capture and storage. So it's like less impact, but again it is dependent on fossil fuels. But when we, if we are talking about a clean source of energy, so we have to raise on it using renewables as a source of this splitting. So renewables act as a clean source because there are no absolute carbon waste from them. This process is actually called electrolysis, which actually depends on splitting these molecules, and we have electricity that can be used by the project. The challenges that are facing green hydrogen actually is related to, first of all, the expenses, because it is actually the highest cost till now. And maybe a witness for this is 80% of the hydrogen that is actually used by countries now is actually derived from natural gas till now. It's not green hydrogen.
Yes.
But many countries are actually trying very seriously to take action and to have some kind of development action for green hydrogen. But again, the challenges are related to the efficiency of the system, the high cost. It's not suitable for every project and not every scale. Maybe this is why we have implemented here a project on for railway, because it is useful for large-scale projects, for long-distance traveling, for storage, because it's known to be high dense. High dense, it means that a small volume of hydrogen can actually generate a lot of energy. And this is actually one of the benefits of using fossil fuel over renewables. Renewables, it is on the contrary, it's not really that dense. So hydrogen is actually, it's taking the benefits from fossil fuels and also some benefits from renewables.
The best of both worlds.
Yes, but we have to act on mitigating some of the challenges that associated.
Do we have the infrastructure needed to be producing and storing and sometimes exporting it?
Till now, we are just users. No, the infrastructure, we lack the infrastructure, and not only us, not only Egypt, but actually many countries. For now, around 40 countries are actually taking initiatives to use green hydrogen, but maybe 9 of them are actually more promising in this regard, because the infrastructure is very costly, and to change an infrastructure which is based on fossil fuel into a green hydrogen, it's a very costly process. But we hope on the long term that we are going to be active in this regard, not as users, but also of developers for this technology.
So what are the environmental concerns for the production of green hydrogen, or as you mentioned, we are users of green hydrogen now?
The environmental impact is always measured in terms of how much energy it consumes and how much waste it produces. As I mentioned, the green hydrogen doesn't have waste. Green hydrogen, not all types of hydrogen. But in terms of energy, it requires a lot of energy to be produced. And also there are some problems related to the efficiency of the technique, because if we trace the process from the extraction of the hydrogen hydrogen to its, of course, transportation and its consumption, we are going to see that we can only make use of 40% of the hydrogen. And we, unfortunately,
60% would be wasted.
60 to 70% is wasted. This also is dependent on the efficiency of the process itself. So as I mentioned, when we are talking about the environmental impact of green hydrogen, unfortunately, it's related to more energy consumption.
We have been speaking throughout the episode about fighting the negative impacts of climate change, to be preserving the environment, but on the other hand, we need to be preserving the economy for the people to be living well in the future. So, in your opinion, is it always something against the other, the economy against the environment? Is it that way, or we could be helping each other out to be in preserving the environment, but at the same time providing jobs and getting money for the people from all over the world?
Let me answer your question by taking examples or citing vehicle companies. Vehicle companies which actually have a large stock of cars in the market, we see them trying to get advanced every day. This means that they actually change their production cycle in order to bring us on the market more green and cleaner vehicles. Why do they do this? It costs a lot of money, but they do this because they know that on the long term they are going to pay in return, which is the concept which is called carbon taxation. This term is actually very well known maybe in other countries. You pay on return of how much you pollute the environment. This is why when we take prior action, when we take prior steps to combat this, we are winners. When we involve the market, when we raise more green jobs, then this how we can have a win-win situation between the economy and the environment.
Yes, Dr. Wala Salah, the Sustainable Development Expert and the Associate Professor at the British University in Egypt. Thank you very much for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Ahmed.
And this brings us to the end of the Daily Debate for tonight. Thank you for watching and goodbye.